If you are invested in these individual people, and if you think that they are interesting, you are going to be more inclined to follow them to where they go. So I think it's a really exciting thing for Caitlin Clark. Hopefully a lot of her fans will follow along with her. All right, moving on, let's talk about the hottest story in college basketball right now, and that is Caitlin Clark, who recently broke the record. She is the first Division I player, and that is male or female, to record 3,000 points, 900 assists, and 800 rebounds in a career. Obviously, if you guys are part of the basketball community or a basketball fan at all, then you have heard about Caitlin Clark, plays for Iowa, and has really just been making a splash across social media, across this basketball landscape. I feel like she is the best women's basketball player that we have seen in a long, long, long time. The only hype that I can imagine that was even close to Caitlin's is right now was possibly Diana Taurasi or Candace Parker when they were at UConn and Tennessee, respectively. It's so cool to see a player like Caitlin who, again, like stays out of the drama, is such a good basketball player, and then just has this confidence about her, and to see her highlights all over like House of Highlights, ESPN, Sports Center, and we don't see that a lot in women's basketball. A lot of the times you see a lot of people just talking negatively about women's basketball, and now you have people going on podcasts asking, is Caitlin Clark good enough to play in the NBA? And that's the actual conversation to be had right now. This to me is proving my point as to how I think the women's basketball game needs to grow and how it will grow in the future. How I think the women's game will grow is if we are invested in individual players first. And I think with NIL, that has made it more possible for a lot of these female athletes. You either have to, A, build up your brand in your respective sport and beyond, or you have to be so damn good that you cannot be ignored. And I think Caitlin, for example, isn't one who grew her brand on social media and became, you know, this kind of like influencer or brand ambassador and grew it separately. She is in the category that I think is very rare to get to, of being so damn good that you're putting out like Steph Curry level highlights. We haven't seen that in the women's game. She's doing that. Now, on the flip side, we have a player like Angel Reese, who is also a great basketball player, but she has made a splash in other ways, from doing all of these NIL deals and being friends with celebrities and being courtside and doing fashion things. And another example we have in another sport is Livy Dunn, for example. Livy Dunn is not the best gymnast, not even one of the top 3 gymnasts on LSU's gymnastics team. However, she has built such a following on TikTok and with Sports Illustrated Swimsuit and all the different modeling ventures and things that she's doing, to where she is a household name, which in turn brings fans who maybe wouldn't normally watch basketball but are so invested in Livy that they want to go watch a gymnastics meet. And I feel like this is what we need for these girls who are playing in college. Another example is the Cavender twins. They have built such a following on social media, and both of them did play at Miami, and now one of the twins is going to play at TCU. I've met them both. They're super sweet girls. They were not superstars on the basketball court. They're good players, of course, but they're not doing Caitlin Clark level things, but they built up their brand separately, which got more eyeballs on them. And I think that that is the key to making the WNBA more popular, getting more fans involved. Because here's also the harsh reality. When you look at men's and women's basketball, the men's game offers a more dynamic game than the women's, for the pure fact that the men are more athletic. There's a lot more dunks. It's a quicker game. It's more exciting for maybe the average fan who isn't as knowledgeable about basketball and just wants to see some cool, flashy thing. When you watch the women's game, the skill is on par with the man's game, but the athleticism is not. So you're not seeing the posters, you're not seeing the lobs to dunk. You might see it every once in a while. And when we do see that, that is something that's blasted all over social media. One thing that girls can do in their game that is so exciting, and Caitlin Clark does it, is those long 3-pointers, those, crossovers that are dropping people to the floor, like breaking people's ankles, fadeaway jumpers. Like those are the kind of skills that the women can do that would be interesting to a general basketball fan. However, most fans of sports in general are men. There are not as many women who watch sports, period. So men are going to gravitate toward watching the men play in the NBA, watching the NFL. I was on a podcast just last year where, I was with a group of guys and I asked them if they watch women's sports, and they said, yeah. I said, well, what do you watch? Volleyball. I watch volleyball. And I asked, when was the last time you watched a volleyball game? And they couldn't answer it, because men don't actively watch women's sport except for maybe when the Olympics come around. However, if you are invested in these individual people and who they are as people, who they are off the court, what their brand is as a whole, and if you think that they are interesting, you are going to be more inclined to follow them to where they go. So I think it's a really exciting thing for Caitlin Clark for having built all of this hype in college. And then when she does make that next leap to the WNBA, hopefully a lot of her fans will follow along with her. And again, that will elevate the rest of the women in the league. And I think for any female athlete across any sport, this time of day that you have with NIL and you have with social media is really giving you so many more opportunities than we've ever had. And so I think whether you're going into college to only play sports and you don't plan on going to play professionally, make the most out of your time in college. Make the most money that you can. Use social media. Figure out what other interests that you have or what makes you unique. Is it something unique that you do on the basketball court that you can really highlight? Or is it something unique that you have outside of basketball? Are you an artist? Are you a musician? Are you into fashion? Are you doing these brand collabs? Do you want to start your YouTube channel? Do you want to start a podcast and talk to other athletes and get your voice out there and help that to be known? Their opportunities are so endless for women in this college setting right now, because the truth of the matter is, going on to that next level in the WNBA, it's not as lucrative as the NBA. And I don't see that changing for a while until people start watching. A lot of men want to throw it back on the women and say, oh, if you want the women to be paid more, then you have to watch. A lot of women don't give a damn about any sport, girls or boys sports. They just don't give a damn. You can't force anybody to watch something they don't want to watch. And I think that's the same on the flip side. I'm not going to try to force a casual basketball fan to, if they watch an NBA game, well, they got to watch a WNBA game too. And I don't think WNBA players also want that to happen. They want fans to be tuned in, who want to see what's going on the court, who want to see their favorite players playing, who want to support their favorite players. And so I think Caitlin Clark is just such a great addition to women's basketball and to women's sports in general. And so I'm excited to see the rest of her career. A lot of people are also calling for her to do a 5th year and continue making a lot of money while she has this NIL and all of these opportunities for brand deals. I think that she will still get lucrative opportunities beyond even playing in the WNBA, but we'll see what she decides. Cameron Brink is another exciting player. Haley Van Lith, I believe is how you pronounce it, is another outstanding player. Paige Beckers is another outstanding player who is battling injuries, but I'm excited to see them. There's a freshman at USC who is already putting up 30-point games. I'm excited to see her. And what I do hope is that all of these women's basketball players figure out ways to expand their brand and get people excited about them as a human, them as a player. And I think in turn with that, they'll follow them to their next venture. And this will all just be a snowball effect that elevates professional women's basketball.
What you're talking about is exactly how the NBA grew, right? Like you had, in the early 80s, the NBA draft and the NBA finals, even, they weren't even televised live, right? But I think in order for the WNBA specifically to grow, using the fan bases that these players get in college and being able to take those rivalries and translate them to the pros would be really helpful. So, like, obviously, the biggest example of that is Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, right? Like, they played against each other in college. It was the biggest, most watched anything ever. And then that rivalry translated to 12 years in the NBA, a bunch of NBA championships on both sides. And then they were both able to hand the torch to Michael, and he elevated the game to what we all know it today. Right. But like at the end of the day, when they first came in the league, it wasn't even a guarantee the NBA was going to exist right now. Mm-hmm. So you need, if it's Caitlin, that's awesome. But if it's Caitlin and Angel and all these players, if they can take those fan bases that they're able to grab, and it translates to, a decades long rivalry between two WNBA franchises, I think that's what it takes. And you're right. Like, players is what matters. Like, as much as we all like, whatever team you root for the players on it, right? Like, right. It's not the Lakers. It's like LeBron James and the Lakers.
The WNBA also needs to do better with their marketing, I think, in general, because I think they've dropped the ball in a lot of areas, even with Skylar Diggins when she was making such a splash. The WNBA was the franchise that was not capitalizing on that. Every single brand was capitalizing on Skylar Diggins and everything that she was doing. And the WNBA wasn't promoting her and leveraging her the way that they should have. And I just remember back in that time, I'm like, why are they not jumping on this hype that she has? Like, she's a fantastic basketball player, and she's on the runway at New York Fashion Week, and she's, making this signature shoe with Nike, and she's signed with Rock Nation and in this music video or whatever. And the WNBA fell short on that. So I think it's old school minded in a lot of ways too, the WNBA. And I think they really need to lean into new media and the new way of how everything is going about right now. And I think hopefully some of this too just silences all of those fans who are like, oh, nobody's going to watch the WNBA unless you lower the rim, which is I've also already had that argument. It's not going to do anything.
And the fact is, in a weird way, that whole making fun of the WNBA thing became some sort of meme or some sort of genre of YouTube video. But the fact is, the popularity of women's sports, I think, has been proven over and over in certain sports. There's people will happily watch. People will watch Team USA soccer women more than they'll watch the guys, right? Mm-hmm. And it's for that same reason. It's, we know some of the stars. We know that they have a chance to win it all, right? I think the reason why, and a good example that sort of proves this point, is that I think it's always been easier to market individual sports quicker because it's easier to get into it faster because it's just one person. And it's if you watch your first tennis match ever and you see, it's Serena Williams, it's Naomi Osaka, and you just are told, your friend who likes tennis more than you can just tell you, oh yeah, she's number one in the world. And so you're automatically in. You're like, oh, cool, she's number one in the world. That's interesting. Who's she playing? This girl, she's number 3, right. And you're in. Whereas it does take more time to get into a whole league and understand, okay, which teams are good, which players are good, what are the rivalries.
To your point earlier, it's it might make sense to keep her in college. Well, the WNBA maybe should make it worth it for some of these stars, for at least a handful of these stars, to not stay in college. Make it worth it for them to go pro. And whatever that means, if that means helping facilitate marketing deals, or if that means paying them whatever the salary cap is, allowing them to make a little more.
And the hardcore basketball fans are already appreciate the WNBA because they appreciate basketball. They appreciate good basketball. So they can see with the WNBA that that's good basketball. The average fan is not going to, or the casual fan, because They're looking for dunks. They're looking for posters. They're looking for a vibe at a game. They don't even care what's going on the court. They just want a vibe in the stands. You go to a WNBA game, it isn't that atmosphere yet. It feels more like you'll get more of an atmosphere and more of a fun time at a college basketball game than you will a WNBA game. It feels like it feels very subpar at these games, and sporadically you'll have like NBA players courtside at the Sparks game, but anyway.
This is a question on my part because I actually generally don't know, but like, so for instance, the NBA it's obviously our league here, but everyone in the world kind of understands it's the best league in the world, right? So ultimately, if you're a great player out of Slovenia, you want to come play in the NBA. If you're a great player, if you're the best guy in China, you want to come to the NBA. It's really the world league, right? Whereas on the women's side, you do hear about, WNBA players have to go play in Russia or go play somewhere else to make extra money and this and that. And is it even the case right now that if you're the best female player in Russia, do you have any interest in coming to play in the WNBA?
Yeah, the best players are here. And I think like the rare example with Diana Taurasi when she went and played in Russia, it was like some billionaire who's like, we just want her here. Give her $1 million. You know what I mean? And so it was more like those countries just making exceptions for people that they really want, because they also realized that like having this player was really going to elevate, to Jordan's point, this is going to elevate our team in a massive way. Like nobody cares about us. And so I think to that point, it's the WNBA figuring out ways, and maybe it's the NBA getting involved, or maybe there's workarounds around it to get some of these great players who can be the next faces of the WNBA and make a splash. Like they need to get compensated more, or it needs to be Nike stepping up and giving them, a $70 million deal like they do LeBron. A lot of these companies will act like they care about women's sports. And I've been in rooms with a lot of them who really want to act like they care. They don't care. They really don't care. Because when it comes down to making the content about it, when it comes down to putting money and investing into it, they don't. So a lot of these big media companies, a lot of these big brands and shoe brands, they don't care. They want to look like they care because it makes their company look better. But I think it is also that time for some of these places to really act on how they claim to feel about female athletes.
I do think that from a content standpoint, the WNBA should probably start to give access, a peek under the hood, so that, again, your average fan, your casual fan who just wants to, who isn't even that invested in any specific team, they want to see the players outside of just playing basketball. They want to see how hard it is and how big business it is to own a franchise, even though a women's franchise. They want to see how hard it is to be a woman and a professional athlete.
Yeah, but I think I put that back on the girls themselves, because it might be more work, but that's why I'm like stressing, especially the girls in college, like you're going to have to do more. If you want your voice to be heard, put it out yourself. Like Draymond Green created his whole own narrative just today because he had his platform. And like, that's what the girls, like, they need to do it first, and they need to prove that it's successful. And that's why I say like the Cavender twins did a fantastic job with that. Like my friend Chiney Ogwumike is now, hosting on ESPN, and she's creating social content. And that's somebody who some people might not even know that she's also still a WNBA player. So I put that responsibility back on the girls first, because they can create that story, which then makes it, you have to like show these big media places, you have to show them that it works first. I think that they have the opportunity to do that. Everyone has a phone, everyone has a camera, everyone, buy a mic, just get it done yourself. Vlog it, show us all the things.